Welcome back to the Are You Annie podcast, where women reclaim their strength, rewrite their stories, and rise above the fire. Hi, I'm Kyle Hackley, your host. I'm an attorney, mother, grandmother, and the author of Undercurrent. I started the Are You Annie podcast because I understand what it's like to walk on fire and to come through the other side. And if you're here, I believe that you understand that also, or you know of somebody and you're trying to understand what they're going through. I've said this before, and I think it's worth saying again. Are You Annie is not just a question. It's a call to action, an invitation to step into your truth, reclaim your power, and know that you are not alone. So let's talk about it. Let's shed light on the things that have been hidden and have been in the dark for way too long, and let's walk that road together. Today's episode is about one of the most painful realizations in an abusive relationship. That moment when you see the truth that your narcissistic partner is never going to change. For so many women, that reality that they're in a narcissistic relationship to begin with isn't something that comes to them overnight. Generally, it happens in fragments, like little moments of doubt, flickers of confusion, desperate attempts to make sense of what feels like chaos in the relationship. Today, we'll walk through that journey using Annie Black's story as a lens to understand what so many women go through. One of the most common responses when living with a narcissist, especially when you don't realize that that's what they are, it's adjusting yourself in hopes of changing them. Annie, like many women, believed that if she could just be the perfect wife, the perfect cook, the perfect housewife and mother, her husband would once again become the loving man she thought that she had married. Annie spent a lot of time tiptoeing around her husband's moods so her husband wouldn't get so angry. But it didn't seem to matter how hard she tried, how much she gave. Her husband never noticed that she was compromising endlessly for him. And in those fleeting moments when her husband would soften, when he love-bombed her again, she believed that she was making progress in her marriage. She believed that he was, in fact, capable of changing and that maybe, just maybe, she could reach once again the man that she had fallen in love with. But the cycle always resets. And every time it left her feeling more broken, more exhausted, and convinced that somehow she was the problem. A narcissistic relationship is a mental and emotional maze. The person you love is both the source of your comfort and the cause of your deepest wounds. This push and pull, this hot and cold, the moments of tenderness followed by cruel indifference, it's all designed to keep you off balance. Annie met Santino as a teenager. She was barely old enough to order a drink in a bar legally. He was her whole world. And in the beginning, that's exactly what he wanted. And it worked until the focus shifted. and Annie did not expect it. When she became pregnant, something she thought that they both wanted, something dramatically changed. The man who once showered her with affection grew distant, irritated, and resentful. For the first time, Annie wasn't the center of his world anymore. The child growing inside her was a threat. It was proof that Annie's attention, love, and energy wouldn't belong solely to her husband. And no matter what Annie did, it was never enough to bring back the man that she thought she knew. As more people become familiar with narcissistic abuse, start speaking out loud, women come across videos like this one, or they hear stories that sound so eerily familiar. They begin to see themselves in the narrative, and often that's the very first time they even consider the possibility that they could be in a narcissistic relationship. And when that reality sets in, it's like finding a missing piece of the puzzle. Suddenly, all of the confusion, the self-doubt, the emotional exhaustion starts to make sense. And then when they start looking back, they begin to see patterns, things that felt isolated or random before suddenly start fitting together. Mood swings, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the emotional abandonment, for example. There's often a moment of relief when they realize what's been happening, because the woman realizes, I'm not crazy. This wasn't all my fault. And best of all, there is a name for what's happening to me. But that relief is short-lived. When the next truth sets in, my husband isn't going to change. Annie spent years believing that if she loved Santino enough, if she sacrificed enough, if she endured enough, she could save her marriage. But the truth, Santino was never going to change, because narcissists don't change. And absolutely, it was not because Annie wasn't worthy of love, not because she didn't try hard enough, not because she wasn't good enough to make him happy. Common thoughts that go through the woman's head. Absolutely not true. It was because all along he was never going to change. And that's the hardest part to accept. That the love, the effort, the years spent trying to fix something that was never fixable, none of it could have ever made a difference. So what does a woman do when she reaches that point of clarity? Usually, she grieves for the relationship that she thought she had. She grieves for the future that she had dreamed about, and for the years that she spent trying to make things work. What she needs to do is start working on reclaiming her reality. Know that that's a tough thing to do, but I'm going to say it again. She needs to start working on reclaiming her reality and understanding that she was conditioned to believe she was the problem, when in fact she was the one being manipulated. I know all of this is difficult, but the woman needs to choose herself. For Annie, the moment she realized Santino would never change, it was so painful. But it was also the moment that she began to break free. And for any woman listening today, if you're in that place of confusion, of questioning, of trying to fix something that feels unfixable, know this: you are not crazy. You are not alone. And you are not responsible for changing someone who does not want to be changed. This episode is dedicated to the women who are waking up to that truth of their own lives, the one who are just starting to recognize the patterns, seeing manipulation for what it is, and understanding that the love they deserve is not something they have to beg for, ever. If Annie's story resonates with you at all, I ask that you keep listening, keep learning, and most of all, keep believing that freedom is possible, because it is. And if you're still listening, there's a good chance that you know of someone who needs to hear these words. So I'd ask that you please share this video, hit the subscribe button, because somewhere there is an Annie in search of answers, and together we can help find her and help her. And as always, you are stronger than you think, braver than you know. And I want you to be tenacious and never give up on what's important to you. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time.